away from the basic property laws of the state? You know, I don't know. And does that cause some of the problem when you, I realize that you, in the securitization, you might take 1,000 of these mortgages that I've just talked about, and you pool them, you securitize them. But still, the fundamentals of each one of those homeowners remains. They're in debt, it's a record of their indebtedness. Am I wrong or right? And what has changed? I'll ask Ms. Thompson next.
Excuse me, there's been a great deal that has changed.
Tell the committee.
Part of that is that the sheer velocity of the transactions that you're talking about began to jam up the recorder's offices. There would be mistakes in those assignments. They would be filed in the wrong order.
Wait a minute, excuse me. You're saying there were mistakes in the, say, the courthouses?
No, Senator. Mistakes in the assignments that the banks were preparing.
Okay, the banks made mistakes.
Yes. And that would ultimately cause title problems, breaks in the chain of title. It was unnecessary that those assignments would be recorded every time.
Why would it be unnecessary to show who owned the mortgage before you foreclosed them? Because heretofore, you always foreclosed in the name of the holder of record, did you not? I guess. Is that right, Ms. Thompson?
Yes, that's the general rule in most states.
Go ahead, sir.
And that still happens today, even with the advent of MERS. What MERS is a common agent for all of those banks. And that way, when servicing changes hands, which is covered under the Truth in Lending Act, there's a hello, goodbye letter. Anytime that changes, that's reflected on the MERS system.
But is MERS reflected, excuse me, it might be reflected on your computer, but is it reflected in the courthouse where the mortgage is recorded?
MERS is reflected in the courthouse at all times, and then if...
Wait a minute, do they record the assignment there at the courthouse? I could go look it up and see who owned the mortgage?
There is no assignment if MERS is the mortgagee.
That's what I'm getting at. You just said there were, so you're correcting yourself. So actually what you're doing with electronic transfer, you've taken the place of, historically, the property laws of the state. Is that wrong or right, Ms. Thompson?
That's correct, and it is true that MERS has the case from New York, Romaine. There have been several cases where clerks challenge the MERS recordation because it removes from the public record any chain of title, and it does complicate homeowners' attempts to discover who the current holder of their mortgage is.
Well, isn't this part of the problem in the foreclosure process? People are saying, I'm asking you, Mr. Arnold, that you don't really own this mortgage. You have no, there's no record of you owning it. How can you foreclose on it? Is that part of it?
If there is a foreclosure in the name of MERS, which might happen as few as 1 in 10
Can you do that legally? Is that the law of the land?
The MERS mortgage can be foreclosed.
No, I asked you a question. Was that the law of the land? In other words, you can do this? Because you used to couldn't do that. You'd had to have the property assignment properly recorded in X county to show, would you not?
Whether or not MERS can foreclose in its own name is a hotly contested issue.
That's what I'm
and varies state by state. Some states have passed legislation allowing MERS to do that. In other states, there's been litigation that has allowed MERS to do that. In other states, there's been litigation that has forbidden MERS from foreclosing in its own name.
So MERS is part of the problem.
MERS certainly complicates
Okay.
determining who the actual ownership and what the correct standing is, and it can have the effect of concealing from the public the role of major lending institutions in foreclosures.
I don't know if you answered my question correctly or like I want you to, but I'm looking for the truth of what the problem is. I think that when you deviated from the basic property laws of the country, you got yourself in trouble. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think that MERS is one piece of the problem. I think there are more serious and more complicated pieces of the problem.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shelby. And I'm going to turn Bob